The fall of Maduro marks a major strategic blow to Russia, which poured years of political capital and economic investment into Venezuela. Venezuela wasn't just another ally, it was one of Moscow's most high-profile partnerships beyond its own neighborhood. What does Russia lose when one of its closest allies collapses, and who stands to fill the power vacuum left behind? The removal of Maduro is a significant setback for Russia, which had invested heavily in Venezuela. Both political ally and economic partner, French publication Le Monde, notes that Venezuela had been one of Moscow's most visible partnerships outside its region. The Kremlin had cultivated Maduro's regime throughout military cooperation, energy deals, political support. Analysts emphasize that the removal of Maduro exposes the limitation of Russia's ability to protect its partners against direct U.S. action, undermining the perception of Moscow's global reach and weakening its leverage in Latin America. Also, Russian political figures have strongly condemned U.S. strikes, framing it as illegal. Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, calls the operation unlawful and destabilizing and suggested it reflected a broader American strategy to control all oil resources. Also, Senator Alexei Pushkov compares the raid to past U.S. interventions in Iraq and Libya, describing it as a resurgence of imperial-style tactics. This statement reflects how the operation has been leveraged domestically to rally national sentiment and criticize Western military operations. Despite this strong condemnation, analysts say Kremlin's official reaction has been carefully calibrated. Russian Foreign Ministry condemned the operation and called for Maduro's return, but senior officials have largely avoided dramatic escalation. Experts suggest this reflects Moscow's awareness of U.S. military power and its desire to protect without risking direct confrontation worldwide. Experts also know that U.S. operation is intended as a broader demonstration of American reach. Analysts cited by Atlantic Council argue that the capture of Maduro signals U.S. willingness to project power decisively beyond the traditional theater, sending a clear message not only to Russia but also to China and other rivals that U.S. is capable of acting militarily in regions of its interest. The operation is also interpreted as a symbolic setback for Russian influence. Venezuela's alignment with Moscow had been both political and economic. Russia had deployed military advisors, signed energy deals, and used Maduro as a diplomatic ally in global forums. The fall of Maduro represents a loss of strategic credibility, calling into question Russia's ability to protect its partner. Analysts suggest that this could force Russia to rethink its global strategy, potentially focusing more on near-border security and less on distant alliances. In addition to this, analysts say the operation affects Moscow's reputation in terms of global strategy. With Maduro removed from power, other Latin American states may perceive Russian support as insufficient to deter U.S. action in the region and weakening its bargaining power. It's weakening Moscow's bargaining power in the international agenda. And also French analysts emphasize Venezuela operation demonstrates a broader message. U.S. military and diplomatic reach remains far away, and regions where Russia has invested politically and economically could suffer. The domestic political dimension is also significant. Russian officials have used the event to reinforce narrative of Western aggression and to argue for strengthened national defense capabilities. Moreover, hardline politicians have emphasized that only a strong military and strategic deterrence can protect Russia from U.S. operations, framing the Venezuela raid as an example for Moscow's readiness. At the same time, some international analysts have noticed that the operation could normalize interventions by major powers. The Guardian describes U.S. action as part of a trend toward demonstrating direct military power without consent, which could encourage other nations like Russia to rationalize similar behavior when protecting their interests. This framing suggests a broader in which U.S. success in Venezuela could diminish Russian influence in the region while giving Moscow rhetorical leverage to justify assertive actions elsewhere. The operation and civilian consequences are Also important, Russia's inability to protect Maduro challenges Moscow global credibility while providing domestic and international talking points to highlight U.S. imperialism. Analysts suggest that the Venezuela operation has weakened Russia's regional foothold, undermines the perception of its military effectiveness, and could prompt Moscow to reconsider its strategy in Latin America and worldwide. Experts conclude the capture of Maduro is a global event. It strengthens U.S. influence in Latin America, diminishes Russia's leverage in the region, and poses both strategic and reputational challenges for dictator Putin. U.S. officials reported no combat fatalities and only minor injuries among American forces. The capture of Maduro marks one of the most dramatic U.S. military actions in Latin America. The Trump administration emphasized the mission was not a war operation but targeted effort to dismantle narco-terror networks. International response has been mixed. Venezuela government calls the operation as an aggression. Cuba and Russia strongly condemned this, while European Union and United Nations called for diplomatic resolution and adherence to international law. Maduro and Flores are currently in U.S. custody and are expected to appear in the New York court. The operation has already sparked intense debate in Washington over U.S. authority to carry out law enforcement operation abroad and the legal implication of this. This bold action follows months of U.S. military intel operation in the region, described by officials as Operation Southern Spear, aimed at disrupting Venezuela's role in international drug trafficking. As U.S. forces continue to stabilize the region, officials are monitoring Venezuela closely for potential political unrest and humanitarian needs. Analysts are warning that the operation may have broader geopolitical consequences. Reuters highlighted that removing Maduro could accelerate region instability and worsen the humanitarian situation. The paper also noted that it may provoke stronger engagement from U.S. adversaries like Russia and Cuba, who have supported Maduro's government. Financial Times coverage emphasized the economic ramifications, pointing out that the operation's aftermath has created uncertainty in global oil markets. Financial Times analysts noted that U.S. officials' comment about oversight of Venezuela oil production have prompted investors to reconsider exposure to Latin America energy assets. Legal and political questioning are also emerging. New York Times stressed that operation raises issues about the U.S. president's authority to act in foreign countries without congressional approval or United Nations mandate. Washington Post added that such action could set a precedent undermining international norms on sovereignty, potentially encouraging other powers to do the same. International reactions has been sharply divided. Venezuela's government denounced the operation as an act of aggression and violation of its sovereignty, while Cuba and Russia still condemned this. At the same time, EU and also United Nations called for restraint and diplomatic solutions, according to Reuters. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and glory to Ukraine.